When we looked at everyone's run-ins last week, some people just weren't having the idea that the lower down the table a team is, the easier they're going to be as an end-of-season opponent. Apparently, the teams in mid-table are easier to play because they're on the beach, and the teams at the bottom are the hardest as they'll be scrapping for their lives. Let's have a look at the numbers and see if these are myths or facts. We'll start with last season's championship mid-table teams and ask the question, do mid-table teams lose more often at the end of the season? I've compared what the middle third did prior to the final month of the season and what they did during the last month of the season. Well, 3 teams moved up, 3 stayed put, 2 moved down, average positional move, 0 places. Did they lose more often because they were on the beach? No. 5 out of 8 teams, in fact, lost less often. On average, mid-table loss percentage went down 3.1% over the last month. Let's look at the bottom, and I warn you in advance, we're probably going to learn a little bit more from League One, as relegation and the Championship was tied up with 2 rounds to play, and the table was a little bit distorted by Derby and Reading's points deductions. 3 moved up, 2 stayed put, 1 went down. Average positional move, up half a place. Did they lose less often while scrapping for their lives? Well, yes and no. It was an even split. 3 teams' loss averages went down, 3 teams went up, but the overall bottom 6 did lose 1.5% less in the final month than the end of the season. So, championship conclusions then from last season. The mid-table teams didn't hit the beach. In fact, they lost slightly less often. With the bottom 6, they were slightly harder to beat, but I cannot agree that that improvement is anything to do with scrapping for their lives. I would put forth the theory, though, that if the beach did exist in the championship last season, maybe the early relegation circumstances dropped it a little further down the table than usual. Right, on to League One we go, and the mid-table beach test. 4 teams moved up, 3 teams moved down, 1 stayed put. Average positional move down a quarter of a place. Did they lose more often because they were on the beach? Maybe not so sure. 3 teams did lose more often, 5 teams lost less often. The average was losing 2.87% less often. Down the bottom, now I know an extra team goes down in League One, but we will stick at the bottom 6 as there is a jump in points with a month to go to the next team, Lincoln, meaning they weren't really, along with Burton, in the scrapping for their lives idea that we're currently debating. 2 moved up, 2 stayed put, 2 moved down. Average positional move, 0 places. Did the bottom 6 lose less often while scrapping for their lives? Yes, they did. 4 out of the 6 had an improved loss percentage. Doncaster ended strongly despite ultimately dropping down. Morecambe pulled off a great escape, meaning the bottom 6 lost 8.6.5% less in the last month of the season than in the rest of the season. So, on the basis of last season's Championship and League One evidence, fact or myth, you'd rather play mid-table as they're on the beach? Myth. Of the 16 teams we looked at, QPR, Ipswich and Shrewsbury were noticeably easier to beat over the final month, but Millwall, Swansea, Blackpool, Bolton and Accrington were actually noticeably harder to beat and far from on the beach. On average, the mid-table get ever so slightly harder to beat by a pretty inconsequential amount, so we can't broadly tar them with the flip-flops, ice cream, sunglasses on the beach theory. And the other end, fact or myth, you'd rather not play bottom 6 sides as they're scrapping for their lives? Fact, I think, especially if you'll let me call last season's Championship an outlier due to points deductions and early relegation confirmations. In League One, where 4 teams drop instead of 3, the number of teams and the level of tension grows. And last season's bottom 6 were nearly 10% less likely to lose in the final month than the rest of the season. There you go. Hopefully that's addressed some anecdotal wisdom. As usual, please, with data videos, if you'd have done it differently, that's absolutely cool. Please Don't get cross about it. And feel free to run your own numbers and show me your findings down there in the comments. I do not claim to have solved any great mysteries. Hopefully, I've extended the conversation though. Now, what to do with all this glorious nerdy information? I would suggest clicking up here to our latest Championship and League One analysis, with second place potentially up for grabs in both.